Good afternoon, everyone. We are about to start our workshop. Welcome, and I'm going to pass the floor now to Amin, who is going to proceed and start the workshop. Thank you, Amin.
Thank you, Nino. So, good afternoon, all stakeholders participating to this workshop. So first, I will introduce myself. So I'm Amin Abada, working for RTE and having this role of convener for the TERRE platform and I would say the RR, the TERRE project and the RR platform since now years. So again, thank you for your participation. Thank you also for the interest. The main purpose of this stakeholder workshop is to go in more details on the optimization aspect. So basically, the heart of all the balancing platforms, but and also the RR platform is what is called the activation optimization function. And the purpose of this workshop is for you stakeholders to know more about this optimization function, the different constraints, which kind of optimization is used, etc., etc. So this is the main purpose. I think in the past we had also the opportunity to exchange with you through different stakeholders. Now it has been a long time we didn't interact with you. And yeah, in the past we have received and debated with you a lot of aspects regarding such things. Basically, before going through the material and the slides, basically, I guess you have access to a chat or question section. So if you have any question, please don't hesitate to draft it within this, so using this chat facility. And of course, we will do our best to answer to all the questions or the maximum of the question. If we not have time to address all the questions, we will see how we can provide you such answers. Last thing, also in the purpose for I would say capturing the minutes of this workshop, and also in purpose to make sure that we will get all the comments or questions from stakeholders. So this workshop, this webinar is recorded, and I hope that it's not harming the stakeholders or the participants to this workshop. Okay, so then if there is no concern about that, now we can go through the presentation. Maybe Nino, if you can, yeah, go to the next slide. Thank you, Nino. So this is the proposed agenda for our workshop. So after an introduction on the RR platform, I would say to give you an update about what happened really at a high level last year about the different connection and the TSOs, member of the RR platform, but also member of the project. So I will develop more. we'll go the first part just to give some reminders, I would say, for you stakeholders about the RR process. So description of the RR process. An update also about the implementation framework. So the amendment of the implementation framework will allow sometimes for questions and answers. We suggest you to have a short break, and after the short break, so as I said, we'll go through the main purpose of this workshop around the AOF description. We'll come back on some principles, market principles. Then we'll describe you which products are optimized through the RR platform and through this AOF, which are the grid constraints which are considered, the key principles also on the market design, and some words also on the IT platform. So how the AOF will try to find the best solution using, between brackets, some IT environment. Before going through also a session of questions, answers, we would like to give you let's say, to highlight some thoughts which are currently discussed amongst TSOs regarding the improvement and the upgrade of the optimization function, the algorithmic optimization part, of course, using the experience of all the TSOs which connected to the RR platform since January 2020. And also the fact that when some TSOs connected to this platform, we face some what we call maybe market situation, and we are looking to fix such kind of market situation, and as I said, to improve the platform. So on this topic 6, please don't consider it as already decided by the TSOs. It's again the purpose of transparency toward you, market participants, stakeholders. Yeah, our wish is just to give you the idea, to share with you idea which you have on the table today. So then let's go, if you agree, on the first part. Introduction. Yeah, please, Nino, go to the next slide. So this is the map of the TSOs countries participating as members, as observers, or as only project members to the TERRE framework, I would say. So first we have what are called RR TSOs, which are somehow split in two regions. We have the West region and East region, Northeast region. So in the West region, we have France, Great Britain, Italy, Portugal, Spain, and Switzerland. And in the region 2, we have only 2 TSOs currently, which are Poland and Czech Republic. So we know that these TSOs are RR TSOs and supposed to connect to the RR platform. So I put aside, if you agree during this meeting, to enter in details about Great Britain situation. So currently within the project, NGESO is still part of the project, and the results of the Brexit deal are still, I would say, under assessment between the different parties, so ENTSO-E, European Commission, UK, etc. So, but the aim, yeah, during this workshop, our aim is not to enter in such details. So, however, until now, we still consider that Great Britain is within the scope of the project. We have also some observers, TSOs observers. We have Bulgaria, Hungary, and Romania. And we have what we call project members. So project members are TSOs or countries which are not using this replacement reserve balancing product. However, they are partners of the project because, and I will maybe introduce it later, because the AUF, so as I said, the heart of this workshop and the purpose of this workshop is to describe the AUF. So this AUF will be also reused for two European, I would say, project or cooperation. The first one is Nordic regional MFRR platform, which is under development. And for this cooperation, the TSOs reused the AUF and the Libra, the IT Libra platform developed, which I describe later. And also there is Amprion, so German TSO, partner of member of the project, because so the MARI project, so the European MFRR platform, which is under implementation, also started from the Libra platform, from the AUF, which we have developed within TERRE in order to implement the target model for the European MFRR platform. Let's move on, please. So I see that we have first questions, so we'll try to address them just at the end of this session. Regarding the accession timeline, so the TSOs connecting to the RR platform, so the European RR platform, the first TSOs which connected alone the RR platform, meaning that this TSO is CHEPS, so from Czech Republic, is using the RR platform in order to optimize the activation of national replacement reserve balancing product. So CHEPS connected 6th of January, so 2020, so 1 year, so more than 1 year ago. Then the second TSO also connected alone, like CHEPS, at the beginning only using at the national level the optimization to activate the replacement reserve balancing product, so March 2022. And then Portugal, so REN connected end of September 2020, and with the connection of Portugal, we had the first cross-border trade, what we call, so the two TSOs, neighboring TSOs using the RR platform. Early October, Swiss Grid connected to the platform, and RTE followed in December 2020, and the last TSO which connected the platform is TERRE, so Italy, mid of January of this year. And we are still expecting PSE, so the Polish TSO. So the current target is now in more or less 2 years. So in Poland there is, I would say, an important adaptation of national terms and conditions, but also system operation processes within PSE, and a lot of interaction between PSE, Polish NRA, and also Polish stakeholders. So it is why the connection of PSE is not expected in the next months. And as I said previously, regarding UK, is still on hold. So looking for the application of the Brexit deal and how it impacts, I would say, the balancing world, or the balancing European balancing market. Please, Nino, next slide. Yeah, so this is really high-level planning. Just to let you know what we are doing currently. We can consider that now the RR platform, so the European platform, was I would say live since now 1 year, I think the TSOs achieved their goal to implement this platform. Then we ensure the connection of the different TSOs. However, we still have some tasks to do. So the first one, which is now not completely closed, is to define, or in the legal aspect, to define the operational framework for reusing the IT platform and the AOF developed by TERRE for MARI, MFRR European project, but also the Nordic cooperation. The second aspect, which we have closed right now, let's say yesterday, is the amendment of the implementation framework, which I describe later on. And there is also regarding this extension of the usage of the Libra platform, the IT platform AOF to MARI, there is a strong cooperation between both projects. So then there is, this is what we call Libra adaptation for MARI. And as I said also in the introduction, when I described the agenda, we are currently working on how we should improve the activation optimization function, meaning improving also the Libra IT platform. Yeah, I think this is the main messages which I would like to give on that. Maybe you can go through the next slide. Yeah, so this is the description of what we call Libra. So I think I used this word Libra several times until now. So the Libra platform is basically the IT product or the IT platform developed by the TERRE project in order to support the RR process, so the European RR process, and also designed in order to be able to be extended for the MFRR process. So basically, Libra as a software is composed by main two modules. The first one is the heart, so the optimization, or what we call clearing algorithm. And this lot or this module was developed and currently maintained by a company named Artelis. And Artelis is invited to, I would say, present the details on the optimization during this workshop. So then Artelis colleagues will introduce themselves later. The second lot or module is what we call data management or IT interface. So how the TSOs will interact with this optimization. And this module, I would say, was developed and currently maintained by Unicorn, I think known company in Europe also. So these two lots are the definition of what is the Libra software, and the Libra software is, so we have also services on the top of the Libra software, so the hosting of this software. And until now, the hosting is done by Unicorn. This IT software Libra platform should be monitored 24 hours, 7 days. So the IT monitoring service is done by IPEXPOT company, and also service of handling all the financial flows between TSOs resulting from the energy exchange between TSOs due to the RR platform, I would say, resulting from the RR platform. And this service is handled by JAO company. And just for your information, in order to ensure that this platform comply with all the specification of TSOs, but also the market design, which we have proposed for this platform and also validated by the NRAs, we used support from a company from Accenture for all the testing phases. So I think this is the last slide from this part. Yeah, again, before going through the different questions, I will continue with the second topic, and then we can handle the questions. Yeah, now description of the RR process, replacement reserve process. Please, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So this slide is a kind of a reminder of what is the RR process and what we call also a TSO model requested by the guidelines on electricity balancing. So we have the European platform, the centralized platform, the optimization, what we call here Libra, performing the RR process in the middle. But this platform is fed by the TSOs. So then the TSOs are connected to their respective BSPs or even BRPs at the national level. So these market participants submit replacement reserve standard balancing product to the TSO, to the connecting TSO. The TSO will have to compute the energy balancing need and then send this information to the centralized platform. So each TSO will have to do that, but also send them the bids, the offers, which we'll describe later to the central platform. The TSOs also submit the available cross-border capacity, which also we'll describe later, and the optimization will consider all these inputs, then we respect the rules, which again we'll describe later, in order to maximize what we call the welfare, and somehow try to satisfy all the balancing needs from the TSOs by activating bids and their cross-zonal capacity constraints in the most efficient way, economically speaking. Then, once this optimization will finish, the results are sent to the TSOs, and the results are, of course, the activation or the request for activation for the bids selected, the satisfied needs, and the cross-border exchanges between TSOs. But also, it's not highlighted in these slides, the centralized platform communicates to the TSOs what is called the marginal price, which also described later how this marginal price is computed. And the TSO then is responsible for, at the national level, to request the activation from the BSPs, BRPs, but also use the marginal price in order to remunerate the activation at the national level. This Libra platform is also connected with the European Transparency Platform, so all the information requested to be published by European Transparency Regulation or by the Electricity Balancing Guidelines are published on the ENTSO-E Transparency Platform. The Libra platform is connected with the settlement module or accounting module for all the financial flows between TSOs. We have also created a module named Market Supervision Module. So until now, this module is only used by the TSOs in order to monitor this market, the replacement reserve market. And the results of this market supervision module are currently shared also with the so all national regulatory authorities. And I would like just to highlight that currently, but it's not only for TERRE, it's for all the balancing platforms. The TSOs are working in order to implement a module named Capacity Management Module, which will deal with all the available cross-zonal capacities, which can be used by all balancing platforms. In the next, let's move to the next slide. Please, Nino. Yeah. Thank you, Nino. This is also a kind of reminder about the operational process, I would say, timelines for the replacement reserve. I think the important information for stakeholders, for market participants, BSP or BRPs, is what is called balancing energy gate closure time. Now, this balancing energy GCT for replacement reserve is set at H minus 55 minutes. H means the delivery start of delivery period. I don't know for some of you who recall such discussions in the past, but when we launched the RR process, this balancing energy gate closure time was set to H minus 60 minutes, and yeah, since now January moved to H minus 55 minutes. The second information I think interesting for the stakeholders is when the deadline for the TSOs to submit all the inputs to the European platform, so the expected needs, of course, the beads, and all the constraints, cross-border constraints. And then we have between H minus 40 minutes and H minus 36 minutes, what is called the clearing phase. So now the optimization will run, and the results are sent to the TSOs at H minus 36 minutes. And then, yeah, so there is communication time, IT times, yeah, IT timing, and then the TSOs are responsible to request activation from BSPs at maximum H minus 30 minutes, and then the delivery period at least right now, and I guess for the next month is considered as 60 minutes, so between H and H plus 60 minutes. Yeah, that's it. I think these are the main information. Let's move to the next slide. Yeah, please, Nino. Yeah. Let's handle this topic and then we'll stop for all the questions. Regarding the implementation framework, so the replacement reserve implementation framework was requested to be submitted by the TSOs to the relevant NRAs by Article 19 of EBGL regulation. Yeah, please go to the next slide, Nino. I guess that the network is quite low because yeah, thank you. Sorry for this delay.
So it seems that there is a slight connectivity issue. If
Yes,
I'm
so
not the only one hearing that, then I suggest that we can answer some of the questions while we wait for him to rejoin us.
yes, that's great. That's great proposal. Alexandra, would you mind going through the questions for us?
Yes, sure. So at the beginning of the presentation where there was the map, so a few of you raised the problem indeed on the inversion that was made on Czech Republic and Austria. The list that was presented is correct, the map was incorrect. So Austria is not part of the TERRE project, Czech Republic is as part of Region 2. Then we have a question, if Amin can hear us again. We have no signs of him.
So the next one I think is probably related to the same, something similar. So the question was, joining alone this project without the participation of other members means utilization of Libra Platform. I guess this question is about how things happen in Czech Republic, because they are not connected to other countries from Region 1. And so, yeah, in their case, they are joining the Libra platform and they have a specific region. So it's just as if Libra was working just for them in isolation. Okay. So then there were some questions. Maybe Nino, you can answer these ones about the slides and the session. So it was mentioned in the beginning that the session is going to be recorded. So there was a question about that. We confirm it's going to be recorded. And there were questions about whether the slides and the video presentation are going to be posted somewhere. Nino, would you like to answer what's the plan in that regard?
Absolutely, thank you. So the slides are already available on the web page that you've used in order to register for this webinar. In terms of the recording, we will certainly have the recording after that because this is being recorded. And in terms of whether it will be published or not on the website, from ENTSO-E perspective, we don't have issue with that. So we will be just confirming with TERRE project if it's possible, and if they confirm it's possible, we will be posting it on the same page, I would imagine. So let's perhaps re-ask that question once Amin is connected again.
Okay. The other questions are probably specifically directed to Amin. I don't know if Alexandra, you can take any of them about volume coupling in UK and the last two questions. Or should we wait for Amin to join us?
Yes, that would be preferable for him to answer the questions.
Okay.
Okay, with that, then perhaps we can proceed with Artelis' presentation, if that's okay with you. Mikhail?
Sure. Regarding the agenda, there was a small break, I think, that was planned at this point.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yes. So let's do the break. So right now it's 2:05, and we have, I believe, 10 minutes break on agenda. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was 15, but I suggest indeed a 10 minutes break. Hopefully it will allow Amin to join us. And in the meantime, we'll see if there are some more questions so we can start with answering this question at quarter to two, if that works for everyone.
Okay, that's great. So dear attendees, so we will be back at 2:15. Thank you so much.
Nino, can you hear me?
So hello again, everyone. I hope you had a nice break. So we have Amin back with us now, and Amin will continue with the slides for the part number 3, and then take some questions. Amin, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nino. And I'm sorry, I understood that maybe I spoke for about 5 minutes, but I was alone. Yeah, then I will just come back on this slide. To be honest, I don't know when I lost you, but I hope now it's working well with the phone connection. So yeah, then main messages from this slide. We had validated replacement result implementation framework validated by the NRS on January 2019. This implementation framework, of course, was used as a document in order to implement the RR platform, which, as I described before, entered in live in January 2020. Between January 2019 and January 2021, things happened in Europe, and for example, the entry in force of 2 proposals in order to define the pricing of the Beads activated through the balancing platforms, but also how to handle the TSO financial flows or settlement flows. Yeah, considering, for example, those proposals, but also other additional modification, the TSOs submitted yesterday a request for amendment for the implementation framework. But this new amended implementation framework was submitted for public consultation to you as stakeholders end of last year in October 2020. Maybe for your information, the main updates which we have made through this amendment is to redefine the designation of the entity which will operate the platform. Now it's all TSOs which will operate the RR platform. So all TSOs using the RR process connected to the platform. We have also made compliant what we called interconnection controllability activation for interconnection controllability purpose with compliant with the pricing proposal and also TSO settlement proposal. We have also clarify, I would say, how and when the TSOs will be able to update the number of daily clearings. So today we have only 24 daily clearings. As also following what I explained in the previous slide, the optimization will run to cover 1 hour. So meaning we have 24 hours and 24 clearings during the day. In the future, the TSOs are aiming to increase the number of clearings. And this topic, counter activation, was in the past discussed a lot with some of you, intensively, I would say. So we found a compromise, I would say, between TSOs and NRS, but also you as stakeholders, to start with allowing counter activation and minimize the counter activation sometime after the go live of the platform. What we have agreed initially is end 2020. But as also I presented in the previous slide, so majority of TSOs connected end 2020, early 2021. So we had to make a proposal to postpone for 1 year this target to minimize the counter activation, and now we are targeting early 2022. And we made also some additional modification requested by NRS. We have deleted the list of participating TSOs. We agreed with the NRS that we don't no longer need of having such list included in the implementation framework. We have also clarified the content of the rules for governing and operating the RR platform, and we added an annex to the implementation framework, and we made also some wording correction, I would say, following feedback from stakeholders. So yeah, as I said, this implementation framework was submitted officially to the NRS these last days, and now each also TSO will be responsible to make a national submission. And of course, once this amended replacement reserve implementation framework will be validated by the NRS, we'll make a communication toward wholesale market and stakeholders. Yeah, so this was my last slide. So now we can go through the questions, and thanks for my colleagues, because I think there is a list of questions. I will try to take them one by one. I will just check if I am behind the schedule or not. So yeah, and we still have approximately 10 minutes to address such questions. So we received question about UK, and yeah, this topic related to volume coupling. So as I said before, the question of UK or participation of NGESO to the project is not on the table of TSO, so NGESO is still partner. However, the connection of NGESO to the RR platform is still pending to agreement discussions, how we'll implement this Brexit deal. And yeah, the topic related to volume coupling, which is now more under discussions for spot market, I would say, for day-ahead market, will be or may be also rediscussed for the balancing platforms in general. But we don't have enough maturity to confirm or not this aspect. Question regarding the slides. Yes, the slides are available. I think we have in the link to register to this webinar, we have also provided the slides. So I think if you click on the link of this workshop, you have also link for accessing to the slides. So the slides are available. And of course, if you have an issue to access to the slides, please don't hesitate to ask Nino. I think also Nino is the point of contact on such kind of questions. So there's a question about where the slides and video recording of TERRE Workshop will be available. So as I said, for the slides, they are already available. Regarding the record, I have to check. I don't know, maybe Nino, you can help me. I don't know if the purpose is to also publish or to make public this record. At least to be honest, I don't know. If Nino, you have the information, that's good. Otherwise, we can take it and answer later on that.
Yes, as I mentioned before already, that if it's fine with you, Amin, and with TERRE in general, TERRE project, we definitely can post it on the same page with the slides and agenda. So. Okay, perfect. So then I have to discuss it amongst TSOs, but so nothing to hide. So I guess the answer is yes, but will be confirmed. But at the end, you will. So in the next days, you will find this record on the website. Other question regarding market supervision module. It's a good question. So the question is, will the MSM be made public for market participants? The first purpose of this module and the different reports for the TSOs and for the NRS are to monitor and to ensure that with the well functioning, I would say, of this new market, which we have somehow created from scratch. When I say we are, is all together. It's not only TSOs with NRS support, but also with the market participants in general support. In the next month, the TSOs will also discuss this point if it's a good opportunity also, in addition to all the information which you can find on the ENTSO-E transparency platform, if the information included in the market supervision module can be also shared or
published somewhere. But yeah, so this question will be addressed by the TSOs and the NRAs in the next months. Yeah, and the purpose again of TSOs is to be as much as transparent on that. Then there is a question: can also third countries, accession to this project be considered in future? Yes. So this is also good question. So basically, so maybe first answer is this project is under EU regulation, but there is a possibility for third countries, what is considered as third countries to access to the project. So it will depend. So basically, when we receive such kind of request, it is discussed with the NRAs and also ACER in order to see what are the possibilities which can be given to the third countries. It depends also, I guess, on the agreement between such third countries and the European Union, etc. So it's not forbidden, at least on system operator perspective. Of course, indeed, mutual support and having, I would say, more TSOs connected to European platforms is welcomed. But however, there is also, I would say, validation needed from NRAs and ACER. So if there is an interest, please don't hesitate to contact the project. You can contact Nino or you can contact me, and we can discuss such kind of things. There is another question: is when we look at the RR process description, it is possible to say that this platform will work like a continuous intraday market? Not really. First, it's not an intraday market. I think it's important to state again that this is for balancing purpose. The continuous intraday market is really working on continuous, so there is no, I would say, gate where we put together all the inputs, so the beads, the needs, and the cross-zonal capacities, and then there is a kind of, we freeze the picture, we optimize, and then we have results. In the intraday market, continuous market, we don't have this notion of gates, so then it's not exactly the same way. However, indeed, it works each hour, and in the future, as I said, we'll increase the number of clearings, so it may work for each 30 minutes or each 15 minutes. Yeah, but it's not the same as the continuous intraday market. Is there a way for both regions to be coupled? This is a good question. So in the West and East region, until now, we didn't engage yet discussion on such aspects. But it's not. It doesn't mean that it will not be discussed in the future. So, as you may know, there are a lot of, at least for this time frame, balancing time frame close to real time, there are a lot of projects ongoing. Still, some projects are under implementation phase. So, try to do it step by step, trying to reach maturity on the different implementation projects, and then we can see how we can improve, which is the next step. And for example, your question to allow exchange of energy between two regions not interconnected is a question which will be discussed in the future. But indeed, we have to also to think to the grid security and such kind of grid security close to real time, which is not an easy topic right now. I guess, so correct me, Nino or Alexandra, but I know there is still one question: is what is the difference between member and observer? So member is for us on platform perspective. Member are TSOs which will connect the platform. Observers are TSOs which maybe are willing to use this process in the future, but it's not decided yet. Or an RR TSO. I'm thinking about Transelectrica, Romania, which is, so at least until now, to be confirmed in the future, Transelectrica is using this RR process on national level, but is not, so Transelectrica is not interconnected, I would say, with other RR TSO, so cannot, is not obliged to connect to the European RR platform. So then Transelectrica is basically isolated TSO and an observer of the RR of the TERRE project, but not member, not intending to connect, at least in the next months, the RR platform. So this is the difference. I will so now slightly behind the schedule. I will quickly. So there are still some questions. Really try to address them. Okay, part of them I would like really to give hands to the to my colleagues from Artemis in order to go in the heart of the workshop. But yeah, so there is a question: will TERRE and Mari converge in the future, in the near future? So it's not foreseen, at least under the EBGL. There is a difference between RR balancing process and MFR balancing process. Merging, I would say, the processes is not on the table right now. However, regarding the second question, when we expect the single EU market for MFR and RR, what I explained before, for example, we are trying to mutualize the IT stuff. So not exactly to mutualize to have the same, but at least to have the same design or the same principles, so we can reuse the modules which can be reused. So there is a kind of synergy which we are trying to capture between both what we call scheduled activation processes. Even for MFR, there is direct activation, but more manual, I would say, activation processes. So looking for synergies, but there is no intention right now to merge, I would say, or to have only one platform which will optimize at the same time MFR and RR processes. But there are some TSOs which have such kind of thoughts, maybe not in the near future, but again, when we stabilize everything, we can start such kind of debates. So regarding the publication of data on ENTSO-E transparency platform, will data be published on a national level or by bidding zone? I think it's published by bidding zone, but I'm not. So I have to check. To be honest, I don't exactly recall, and sometimes I'm even mixing things. But I have to check. But from my perspective, it should be published by bidding zone. But so we take this one, and we will confirm with also my colleagues from TERRE. Yeah, so for PSC, you're right regarding the question. So is PSC now scheduled to join TERRE in 2023? The answer is yes. And I don't know who asked the question, but you're right when you said that I had the previous information that it was end of 2021, beginning 2022. It's changed, yes, recently. A few weeks ago, we received the communication from our colleagues from PSC, so explaining the situation which I tried to describe. So the important evolution in Poland regarding balancing market in general, but also operational processes, which unfortunately pushed their connection to the RR platform for an additional year. That's it. So I think I covered, I hope, all the questions, and I hope that also my answers were clear enough. If not, please don't hesitate to ask, and I hope that at the end of the meeting we can take additional minutes to address them. Now it's time for me to give the floor to my colleagues from Artelis. So on the second part, so as I said at the beginning, this is the main purpose of this workshop, is to give details on the optimization, and yeah. So, and also, as I said, Artelis is the company which developed and now currently maintain the Libra optimization part. And yeah, so we invited them to take over on this presentation. Please, Michael.
Thank you, Amin. So I hope you can hear me well. So as Amin mentioned, we'll be discussing the implementation of the AOF and details about the design of the optimization and the market clearing algorithm behind TERRE, hopefully giving you some more clarifications in that regard. And yeah. So in today's presentation, we'll discuss firstly I'd say basic market principles, and then we'll go into the details of TERRE specifically. So we'll discuss the market product, quickly some details about the grid modeling. There will be a section which will be dedicated to the key market design decisions which were taken by TSOs during the project, and so for good functioning of the market and also of the algorithm. There would be some detail about the algorithm itself, the optimization module. And then in the final section, we will discuss some recent and some upcoming updates to the activation optimization function, so the AOF, that have happened or will happen in the future in Libra. So just to start, I'd like to mention a few words about our company. So we are from Artelis, and we've been tasked with the implementation of the activation of optimization function of Libra, so for TERRE. And just to mention it for those of you who don't know us, we're a French company specialized in providing decision support tools and services based on quantitative mathematics and quantitative techniques, so that encompasses optimization, statistics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and we provide actually both consultancy services and software, so solvers and out-of-the-box software, as well as ad hoc development. Just one last point to mention that because of those skills, we intervene in many areas, but we have a particular specialization in energy in the company, and that's why we are especially present on this kind of markets and tasks. So I would like now briefly to introduce actually some, let's say, basic economic principles. The idea here is, well, you probably all know that, but I want to make it clear actually what's the purpose of the algorithm, so you can keep it in mind for the rest of the presentation. So I guess that all of you have seen such curves already in your life at some point, when you were explained that usually the price is where the supply and the demand are meeting each other's. So what I want to illustrate here in these curves is what we are trying to optimize for the TERRE market, and that actually that we are trying to optimize is the social welfare. And I want to insist on that. That's a very important thing to keep in mind, that the market clearing algorithm is focused on maximizing the social welfare. So you might know that you can separate the social welfare in different parts, like the consumer surplus, which would be this part of the curve, let's say what's above the market price and below the demand, or the producer surplus. So grossly, actually, the consumer surplus is, let's say, roughly what the consumers are keeping as money, because let's say they were ready to pay this price, but in the end they paid the market clearing price. Maybe I can do a quick drawing. So that was the market clearing price. This consumer, for instance, was ready to pay this price, and he didn't. He paid this price instead. So all of this is some money that wasn't spent on the market, and the consumer can keep for himself. And similarly for producers, let's say, assuming that's the production cost right here, and I'm a producer, so that was my cost. That was what I was paid, and so this part is actually my revenue. So just to be clear once more, the purpose in TERRE is not to optimize the consumer surplus, not the producer surplus. It's really to optimize the social welfare. Just two quick additional things to mention. Well, here we are talking about a coupled market, so there's also a third part that adds up to the social welfare, which is the congestion rent. So that's something similar, but for interconnectors. And just also to keep in mind, this is a balancing market. So when I say here it's the demand, here it's the supply, it's a bit more tricky than that because obviously the demand can be upward or downward, and similarly can the offers be. So TSOs and bidders are both on actually both parts of the curve. So that being said, I hope this is clear, and you can keep it in mind for the rest of the presentation. Here was some quick summarize about what was mentioned here. Just something I didn't mention is about the price itself. The price actually, let's say the surplus depend on the price. As you can see here, if I raise the price right here, for instance, this reduces the consumer surplus. But the overall, actually, the social welfare doesn't depend on the price. But of course, some strange thing happens if you allow the price to not be at the intersections. The reason why I want to mention that is because sometimes there are what is called price indeterminacies. So there's a choice that is possible on the price, and there are some impacts of such decisions that will be detailed and discussed a bit more in the remainder of this presentation. So I hope this first part is clear. I will let my colleague Laurent take on the presentation and discuss with you the market products, introduce them to you so you can see actually what are the different products available on the market.
Thank you, Michael. So you should be able to see my screen.
Yes, thanks, Laurent.
And so we will now go through all the market products that can be exchanged within the TERRE market. So we will differentiate the needs and the bids. So the needs that are submitted by the TSOs and the bids that are originally submitted by the BSP. And so we'll start with the bids. So what is a balancing offer in TERRE? What are the characteristics? So we have many common characteristics that all types of bids have in TERRE. So first, there is a scheduling area, which is the location of the delivery, let's say. A balancing offer is always defined on one or several time steps. So we talk about BTU for balancing time unit in TERRE, and there is maximum 4 BTU on which a bid can be defined. And then attached to this offer, there is a product that will have as well some common characteristics. A direction, either upward or downward, which will be the same for all BTU. A maximum quantity, a minimum quantity, and the price that will be able to vary across the BTU. And eventually, a a family group to which it may belong to in case of complex order. So we have here presented here an example of a divisible upward bid defined on 2 BTU with different quantities, right, on each BTU and different prices, 10 euros per megawatt hour on BTU 1 and 40 euros per megawatt hour in BTU 2. So then we will go through the fully divisible bid, which is the first types of bid and the most simple one, let's say. So these bids are always single BTU. They are defined on only 1 BTU. They have, of course, a maximum quantity and the price. And their particularity is that they are fully divisible. We can select any quantity out of it as long as it is below the maximum quantity. So the bid is rejected if the accepted quantity is 0. And one little note on these types of bid. So if in TERRE, if in any market, we have only fully divisible bid, meaning that the entire volume of the market is completely divisible, then it means that we don't need a very complex algorithm to determine the price and the accepted quantity, because we can just actually order the bids according to their price and find the intersection, right, which will determine the price and the accepted volume. So in that particular case, when you have only fully divisible bid, the acceptance of a bid is determined only if it is in the price or not. Of course, in TERRE, we have more product, and in any market, usually we have more product, additional product that complexify a little bit the price and the volume determination. So the next type of bids that we can exchange in TERRE is the divisible bid. They are quite similar than the fully divisible bid, except that they have a minimum quantity that is greater than 0. So in that case, the accepted quantity of the bid shall always be above the minimum quantity and below the maximum quantity. Then the next type of bid we can exchange in TERRE is the block bid. Again, these bids are single BTU, and their particularity is that their minimum quantity is equal to the maximum quantity. So this bid, either we can select them entirely or reject them. We cannot select partially these types of bid. So then we have different, more complex bids. So we're going to start with a linked bid. So a linked bid in TERRE is actually a family of bids that belong to the same scheduling area that can have maximum and minimum quantities, different maximum and minimum quantities that can have different price as well, but they are all in the same direction. All the bids of the family shall have the same direction. And what makes them part of a family is that there is some kind of coupling constraint that link all these bids together. And the constraint is that if we select the link bid, it means that we shall select all the bids of the family at the same ratio. So in TERRE, we define 2 types of link, the linked in time and the linked in volume. So for the linked in time bids, all the bids of the family are defined on different BTUs, whereas for the linked in volume, all the bids are defined on the same BTU. So we have an example here on the right, where we have one linked in time bid, for instance, made of four bids on different BTUs. We noticed that they have different maximum and minimum quantities, and we noticed as well that on BTU2, the volume is completely indivisible, right? So this means that with the coupling constraint that says that if we want to select the link bids, we shall select all the bids at the same ratio. As in BTU2, we are forced to select 100% of a bid. It means that we shall also select all the bids at 100%, even if their minimum quantity is actually close to 0. So in the case of linked in time bids, the BSP have several ways to submit them. They can either define one bid, submit one bid defined on multiple BTUs, or they can submit several bids defined on different BTUs with a link indicator indicating that they are part of the same linked family. So then another types of product that can be exchanged in TERRE are the exclusive bids. An exclusive bid is a family of bids that belong to the same scheduling area. And here the coupling constraint is that only one bid of a family can be accepted, even partially. An exclusive family can be made of fully divisible bid, fully divisible bid, divisible bid, or block bids, right? Or a mixed of them. A bid can be either upward or downward, and they can be single BTU or multi-BTU. So we have, for instance, here an exclusive bid made of 3 different bids. The third one is a multi-BTU bid, and we shall select only one of the 3, right? So in this case, the first one. Just one note on this third bid, which is multi-BTU. If we decide to select this bid, of course, we shall respect the multi-BTU bid constraint we mentioned earlier, because this bid is actually a linked in time bid. So a linked in time bid can be a part of the exclusive family. The last type of bids that we're gonna find on TERRE market are the multi-part bids. A multi-part bid is a family of bids that belongs to the same scheduling area. And here they are ordered according to their price. And the constraint, the coupling constraint, is that if we select one bid of a family, we shall select fully all the bid in earlier position. So we distinguish 2 cases, the multi-part bid upward and the multi-part bid downward. So in the case of the multi-part bid upward, the bids are ordered according to their price, starting with the cheapest one. So if we select a bid, then we shall select entirely all the bids that has with lower prices, right? And in the case of multi-part downward, the bids are ordered according to their price, starting with the most expensive one. So if we select one bid, we shall select entirely all the bids with higher prices in the family. So we have 2 examples here. On the left, one example of multi-part upward, and on the right, a multi-part downward. The multi-part upward bid is, for instance, made of 3 different bids, with the third one, so one at €1, one at €2, and the last one at €3, which is a multi-BTU bid. And here, in order to start selecting the bid at €3, we shall fully select the bid at €1 and the bid at €2, right? In the case of the multi-part down, which is made of 4 bids, in order to start selecting the bid at €3, we shall fully select the bid at €5 and the bid at €4. One just little additional rule that we have for the multi-BTU bid that are part of multi-part families, which is the case for in this example with the multi-part bid upward. Their maximum quantity, their minimum quantity, and their price shall be constant across all the BTU. So that was all for the bids. Now we can focus on the needs, which are submitted by the TSO. On TERRE, we can handle 3 types of need: the inelastic need, the elastic need, and the tolerance bound. These 3 types of bid have some common characteristics. They all have a maximum quantity, of course. They all have a 0 minimum quantity, meaning that they are all fully divisible. And they also have a direction, either upward or downward. So now they also have some specificities, of course, and the inelastic need, the particularity of the inelastic need is that they have no price. So when the TSO submits an inelastic need, it means that it's a need that he wants to have satisfied whatever the cost so at any cost, basically. So it is a need that should be satisfied in priority. This need can be multi-BTU, and a TSO can submit only one inelastic need per scheduling area and per BTU. Sometimes this type of need can come with a tolerance band. We will talk about that a little bit later. The second type of need that can be submitted by the TSO are elastic need. The difference with the inelastic need is that the elastic need has a price. So they can be satisfied at a given price. So they are less, they should be satisfied like after the inelastic need, right? Which are more, which should be satisfied in priority. They can be multi-BTU as well. And basically, the elastic need are similar to fully divisible bid in the case of single BTU, right? The only difference is that they are submitted by the TSO. The last type of need that we're going to handle in TERRE are the tolerance band. The tolerance band are always attached to an inelastic need, and they have no price as the inelastic need. And the idea behind the tolerance band is to bring some more flexibility to the inelastic need. An inelastic need should be satisfied whatever the cost, right? But in some situations, especially when there is a lack of liquidity in the market, when there is a lot of block bid, multi-BTU bid, we may not be able to match the volume exactly, right? And in that particular case, the TSO may prefer to have some part of the inelastic need satisfied instead of not at all, right? So the tolerance band will help to actually select the indivisible bids that are provided, right? And to make it match with the volume of the inelastic need and with some volume from the tolerance band, which can be partially selected. So tolerance band is fully divisible and is also single BTU only, right? So this tolerance band will be used only if it can improve the social welfare. So that was all for the market products. So if you have some questions, I think I was not able to see them.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Laurent.
Okay, so could you, I don't know if someone can.
Yeah, I read them. So there was a few questions in the meantime. The first one was whether participants can submit their divisible bid with minimum acceptance ratio. So that's the minimum quantity that Laurent mentioned at some point. Yeah, that's the Q min that you can see here. The answer is yes, so the algorithm handles it. What I'm not able to tell actually is if all TSOs allow for Q min, which is not 0 nor Q max to be specified. Maybe, maybe I mean you have the answer to that. I think that's the case. But
yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So basically, from my perspective, from my knowledge, is the case. However, I think what is important right now is to know that it's allowed by the I would say central platform, European platform, and if some adaptation are implemented at national level, indeed don't hesitate to contact your respective TSO or connected TSO. But yeah, so from my perspective, the answer is yes on that.
Okay, thank you, Amin. So the next question is, do you enforce to execute divisible bids with 100% ratio if it is in the money? So we'll discuss what we call the URB a bit later. So first of all, I would like to insist on a distinction that Laurent made, which is the distinction which is between fully divisible bids, so bids with Q min equals 0, and divisible bids. Within the algorithm, fully divisible bids have the utmost priority, so everything is done so that they are accepted whenever they are in the price. However, this is not strictly enforced. So because in some cases, enforcing this let's say execution of divisible bids, let's say at all costs, can prevent satisfaction of inelastic need. So yeah, the answer to that question is no. It is not strictly enforced that it is fully accepted if it is in the money. Although the algorithm tries to do that whenever that is possible, and at the same time satisfying the inelastic need. Then there was a question on linked bids. So a question to explain again what are linked in time bids. So basically, linked in time bids are bids that you can submit on multiple BTU. So in this example, Laurent illustrated a bid that is submitted on 4 BTU with actually 4 different minimum quantities. And that means that if you want to accept this bid, you have to accept all parts, so on all BTUs with the same acceptance ratio. So if you accept this bid, let's say at 50%, it has to be accepted at 50%, sorry, on each BTU. So that's how linked in time bids work actually. So you provide curves and they have to be accepted at the same quantity. Do you want to add something on this to complete the explanation, Laurent?
I mean, I think it was clear, but maybe the original writer of the question can say something. But
okay. Last one, I think this one is for you, Amin. So can the bidding structure by each TSO be published if the formulation of elastic imbalance needs is allowed by the NRS?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So right now, at least with the equivalent obligation on European transparency and electricity balancing guidelines, so there is no such kind of request. So I would say that the NRAs allow this possibility of elastic needs. Basically, it's not, so again, it's linked to national terms and conditions. It's not allowed in all, I would say, countries or TSO, for all TSOs. However, for majority of TSOs, it's allowed. And somehow there is no obligation to publish inelastic or inelastic need. So what we can publish is only the need which is submitted by the TSOs. However, your question, we can understand it from TSO's perspective, and we'll rediscuss it with the NRS.
Thank you.
Yes, the next one. Yeah, the next one is also. Yeah, is there an overview where one can see which TSO is using inelastic need and which ones are using elastic? Again, it's linked to my previous answer. So today in our transparency obligation, we don't make distinction between both. But yeah, as I said, this question will be also discussed with our respective NRAs. The next one is, could you better clarify the practical application of the tolerance band to inelastic needs? So I guess that behind practical, so how the TSOs are using this tolerance band. Again, this is also it's not used by all TSOs, so it's possible to be used. So let's call it functionality exists on the EU platform. Some TSOs use it, and it's, I would say, under validation of national terms and conditions, or at least agreement of the NRA to use such kind of tolerance band. In the past, maybe for the stakeholders which were involved when we were discussing the design of the RR platform, we called it flexibility, need flexibility. So to make the need a bit flexible. Yeah, but so there is no harmonized practical application, I would say. The next one, it's also more for the TSOs. Can TSOs choose freely between submitting inelastic need or elastic need? Yes, so the TSOs can submit elastic if the TSO is, I would say, allowed by its NRA to submit elastic need, can also submit inelastic need, can submit both inelastic and elastic need. And regarding the second question, which is even though inelastic are cleared first, the clearing cross-border marginal price at the end, it's the same for all bits for every BTU, right? So the first answer is yes. I don't know, Michael, if it's maybe the right time to say that there are maybe additional constraints, but I would say the answer should be yes outside of the constraints topic. But maybe I'll leave you compliment on that.
Yeah, we'll see that right after in the next section.
Exactly.
So I suggest we defer this question. What's next? Okay.
Yeah, for the next one, maybe I will leave. So there's still two others, and then we can switch to the next topic. Maybe the next one, Michael, I can leave it for you.
So the next one is about actually the acceptance ratio. So let's say you have a bid with a 60% minimum acceptance ratio. Well, and it is difficult mathematically to accept it in 80%, or the algorithm prefer to be on the safe side and accept it on what minimum acceptance ratio has defined at the beginning. So I think, well, possibly my explanation wasn't clear here. If you have a minimum quantity of 60% of the bid actually, then any quantity in between 60% and 100% can be accepted. So 80%, 60%, of course, 65, 99, 100%. Any quantity can be accepted, which is between the minimum and the maximum. And the algorithm will choose actually the quantity which is best in respect actually to maximizing the social welfare and satisfying the business rules, which will be discussed right in the next section actually, and you will see that there are some, let's say, business rules that are enforced and some that are, let's say, optimized, and that is what guides actually deciding on what bids are firstly accepted and which aren't, and what is the acceptance ratio of each bid. So all of that is done in the purpose of maximizing social welfare and respecting the business rules. And I see then a last question. Is there any plan to include congestion management to replacement reserve platform in addition to balancing needs? If not, are TSOs planning to use RR bids for congestion management, and when? So I guess, yeah, I mean, you probably have some element here, but this is also probably related to DFR, which we'll discuss right after.
So yeah, indeed. So we'll come back to this topic, which is called desired flow line, but also called interconnection controllability. So being able to control the flows on the borders. I will use the wrong word, but I think at least to illustrate, there is a possibility with the RR platform to handle both balancing purpose and and this is a wrong word, but again, to illustrate, implicit control trading. So basically to give the possibility to the TSO to define a range of possibilities for the flows between neighboring TSOs. So this specific topic will be described later, and also so we will show you how it's treated by the optimization. However, currently, at least with the RR platform, with the model which we have developed, so there is no possibility to handle local or national congestions. This is done by the TSOs at the national level. Indeed, for some TSOs, there is a possibility to use RR beats in order to solve congestion or to handle congestion management. And it can be done either before, I would say, the clearing, before the run of the optimization, and it can be done after. So if it's done before, basically there is a possibility also with EBGL to make such kind of beats as unavailable for the optimization. If it's done after, so normally in normal situation, it cannot be done with the beats which will be activated through the platform, because such beats are activated to solve a balancing situation. However, if the same bead, by activation of this bead, we can solve the balancing and at the same time solving the congestion. So of course, it's good for the TSO, and the remuneration will be based on the marginal price resulting from the platform. If the beads which will be activated, our beads which will be activated to solve this congestion was not activated by the balancing platform, so the TSO will be able to activate it for solving the congestion, and the remuneration of this activation will be based on national terms and conditions. So it's out of the scope of the common platform, I would say, rules and the RR implementation framework. I hope that we answered to all the questions. Now we can move to the next next.
Thank you. So, Stefania, you can continue.
Yeah. So in this part, we will see how the grid. Okay, I thought you were. Okay.
Good.
Do you see my slide?
Yes, yes, we see them, Stefania.
Yes, no, yes.
Perfect. So in this part, we are going to see how the grid is modeled. The grid is made of control area, which are the areas at a higher level. Each control area can be made of one or more other type of areas, which are called scheduling areas. And for example, we can have in France one control areas which contain only one scheduling area. And in Italy, we have one control area which contains 8 different scheduling areas. Bids and needs may be submitted at the control area level. And in order to allow exchanges between scheduling areas, we have the interconnector, which link to scheduling areas. So we may have interconnectors between scheduling areas belonging to the same control area, as in Italy, or belonging to the different control areas, as we can have between France and Great Britain. So here we are going to see more in details the interconnectors, which link to scheduling area and which represent the flow between these two areas. Each interconnectors have some common characteristics. Each interconnector has a loss factor, which represents the loss of flow that we have when we have a flow through the interconnector. Each interconnector has a scheduling step, which states that we have to have the same flow either on 1 BTU or 2 BTUs or 4 BTUs. As we have here the example, the scheduling step is of 2 BTUs. This means that we need the interconnector has to have the same flow on the first 2 BTUs and also the same flow on the last 2 BTUs. At each extremity of the interconnector, we have the ID of the areas that are linked by the interconnectors, for instance, area 1 and area 2. And each interconnector has 2 different directions. And for each direction, the available transfer capacity is specified, which state the maximum flow that we can have on one direction. We can have an available transfer capacity of, for instance, of 100 megawatt on one direction and an available transfer capacity of 500 megawatts on the other direction. So we can have different limits on the 2 directions. Also, for each directions, we can have the so-called desired flow range, which enforces on technical constraint on the flow, and that we will see later in the next slide. Concerning how the flow is represented, we have an exported flow and an unimported flow. So if, for instance, we have a flow that is exported from area 1 to area 2, the flow exported, and we have a loss factor on the interconnector, the exported flow will be exactly the flow submitted to the interconnector, while the imported flow will be subjected to the loss factor and will be therefore lower than the exported flow. The mid-channel flow is the average between the exported and the imported flow. For instance, if we have an exported flow of 100 megawatts and a loss factor of 10%, the imported flow will be of 90 megawatts, and the mid-channel flow will be the average, so 100 plus 90 divided by 2, so 95 megawatts. So now we are going to see what we have mentioned, the desired flow range. This desired flow range indicates a continuous interval flow for the flow on the interconnector, and it can be defined either on one direction of the interconnector or on both directions of the interconnectors. In this case, we would have for one interconnector 2 desired flow ranges that are defined. Each desired flow range is related to the mid-channel flow, and it takes into account an already scheduled flow, a maximum overall flow, and a minimum overall flow. According to the value of these 3 elements, the algorithm we will try to either send a flow in the same direction where the desired flow range is defined, or it will try to send the flow in the opposite direction. For instance, if we have a scheduled flow that is lower than minimum constraint, what the algorithm will try to do is to send flow in the same direction where the desired flow range is defined in order for the flow to reach this minimum constraint. However, I want to underline that what the algorithm do is not to ensure that the minimum value is achieved, but it will try to achieve this minimum value as an optimization criteria. So it is not enforced strictly, but it will try to reach this minimum value. What the algorithm does, and it ensures as a hard constraint, is that the maximum bound on the flow is respected. In this case, the maximum bound on the flow would be the value of the maximum constraint minus the value of the scheduled flow. So we are sure that this upper bound of the flow will never be exceeded. So essentially, what we is to summarize a bit the grid model, we have control and scheduling areas. Between scheduling areas, we have interconnector that allows flow exchanges. And for each interconnector, we have different characteristics, and we may have some technical constraints that are called that are enforced through the desired flow range. I don't know if we have any question. About that part.
At least I didn't see question on the chat. Maybe there is one. I don't know, Michael, if you would like to take it.
Yes, so the question is on slide 20, maybe you can go back there, Stefania.
Yeah.
It is shown that the information collected on interconnectors is with max flows in both direction, losses, desired flow range. However, there is no mention of voltage angle at each bus or substation, and this parameter is very important to maintain power system stability. Perhaps this function is carried out by TSOs for capacity margin calculation.
Yeah, sorry, maybe it's more for me. I didn't read the whole question. So indeed, at least with how we say, so the TS, so it's up to the TSO to formulate such kind of constraints related to the I think slide 20 is related to the DFR. So and basically when the TSO will have to formulate such kind of constraints or such kind of need to respect desired flow range, this TSO should integrate all the constraints, internal constraints, at least what is referred in this question related to voltage angle at each bus or at substation level is not explicitly provided to the central platform. But indeed, I think we agree that this is important for the stability of the power system. Yeah, but then the answer is here. So the TSO is responsible to maintain such stability by integrating all the constraints or all this information when there is a formulation of these DFR constraints or the constraints which are sent as an input to the platform. So I guess I answer to this question. For the next one, what is the role of the control area? So the control area or the scheduling area is also defined by system operation guideline, and basically, so at least in Europe, we have TSOs which correspond to one control area, scheduling area, and we have TSOs where we have different scheduling area, control area. In TERRE, Italy has different control area, which corresponds to the non-bidding zones in Italy. So I think there is no specific role. Is how for example, TERRE operates its system, considering the internal constraints and the definition of the different zones in Italy. TERRE is responsible, I would say, as system operator of all the control areas within Italy. But for example, yeah, just to complement, in France, in Spain, and Portugal, it's only one. There is one control area, one bidding zone. But in some countries, such like Germany, which are not in TERRE, as I would say, RR user or RR TSO. So we have 4 control area, but 1 bidding zone. So just to give you an overview, what can exist in Europe. So there's no specific role. No, there's TSO, which is responsible to operate all the zones. For example, in Italy, within Italian country. Maybe the next one is for you, Michael. And Stefania, we are, yeah. Please, Michael.
Yeah, so David will take over for the presentation.
Okay. No, but there is a question again. So could you clarify how the desired flow range impact the interconnector flow?
Yes,
I can answer if you want.
But yeah, David, actually, you have a part on that, right? On the modes.
Okay.
So let's discuss the clearing modes first.
Okay.
We get back to that question after, if that's not
answered. Do you see my screen? Just to...
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So maybe first the desired flow range, how it impacts the flows. Basically, desired flow range, as I mentioned, is a range of flow that we would like to push algorithm to go to. So for that, either it's something we have guarantee that we can reach. So that's sense we will implement some constraints, and in some case we will try to add some criteria to push forward the flow to go into this range. So it depends on the situation, but either it's a criteria we try to maximize in order to be into the range, or it's a hard constraint. But we're going to see more in detail right now. So here I'm going to present the key market design concept. So it will be high level, and after I will go more into detail how it's implemented, but don't worry, there will be no equation directly in the presentation. So how the market I would say design works. We have some rules that are with high priority, some rules that are with low priority. And because we are we try to optimize something, we use optimization algorithm. And in this kind of, I would say, algorithm methodology, we have 2 classes of, I would say, rules. We are rules that we are forced to respect and to satisfy, and that's why we call it that hard constraint. And these hard constraints are the first rule we try to satisfy, and actually. In the concept of optimization algorithm, we can ensure that all solutions that are issued by the algorithm satisfy these hard constraints. So here we mentioned some of them. So there is a prevention of UABs, of adverse flow, and price convergence. This is something we're going to see more in detail in the next slide. We have upper bound on flow from a desired flow range. So this is something I mentioned. When we know that we can satisfy 1 or 2 constraints on the desired flow range, we put it as hard constraints. There are also hard constraints such as basically linked to the Bead modeling. This is quite direct. So this is a hard constraint in order to make sure that the solution satisfies all these hard constraints. And after that, we have some criteria we try to maximize the one after the other. So the first one we try to maximize is the inelastic demand satisfaction. So this is the highest priority in the algorithm, and this has also a huge influence in the design. We're going to see it later. The other, I would say, criteria, top criteria we try to maximize is the desired flow range satisfaction, or we minimize the desired flow range and satisfaction, depending how we're going to see it. But basically, when on some for some desired flow range, we don't have a guarantee at the beginning that the flow can reach this desired flow range. In that case, we try to minimize the unsatisfaction of the desired flow range. So this is the two top criteria. After that, we have other criteria. So the next one is a maximization of social welfare. So what is important to notice is compared to the presentation that had been made by Mika at the beginning, we put two, I would say, criteria above maximization of the social welfare. It is the inner satisfaction and the desired for satisfaction. After that, we have, I would say, more minor objectives. So the first thing is to minimize the usage of tolerance band, meaning that if you don't need actually to use it, we rather not. After that, we try to minimize the cross-border flows, meaning that if we have equivalent solution, we will rather choose a solution that use less cross-border flow, meaning that we prioritize local satisfaction of the inner need. After that, we have the maximization of trading volume. This is a case where you have two, I would say, an upward bid and a downward bid that are at the same price. And basically, they can either be both selected or both rejected. In that case, you have the choice because it has no impact, I would say, in the global social welfare because they are at the same price. And that's why a decision has been taken to maximize the trading volume. So we choose to select both of these bids. The next one, actually, we're going to have two last one. These low and I would say criteria to maximize are really linked to the price determination. The first thing we're going to do about that is to try to minimize the URB. We're going to see what is it actually, but basically is the equivalent of PRBs, is a so paradoxically rejected bid of basically what bid when they are in the money. We try to minimize them, so to put the price at as close as possible to the bid price in order to minimize them. And the next one is a minimization of the distance to the price target. So we define price target based on the accepted and rejected bids. We basically look at the middle point between these two bounds, and we try to minimize the distance between the market clearing price to the price target. And after that, we have some post-process with some rounding and some proprietary rules where we try to prioritize, for example, fully divisible bids over divisible bids. The rounding is written that it can lead to PS bid. So this is something quite tricky, but in some situation you cannot find perfect rounding in terms of price, in terms of quantities that satisfies all rules. So in some cases, it can end up with some bids that are, I would say, tagged pay as bid, because considering the unrounding, the values and price, everything is normal, but considering rounding values, it may happen that the bid end up pay as bid, and in this case, this is noticed to the platform in the TSO know the margin, and we settle that on their part. Now, if we can go more forward to some precision.
David?
Yes?
Yeah, David, if I may, just I mean speaking, maybe just for stakeholders, I think you mentioned this point, but so for at least for the RR platform, we use these words of URBs, enforceable rejected bids, and UABs, enforceable accepted bids, but the notions which will be described now, but I think it's interesting to say it again, is the same as the paradoxically accepted bids or paradoxically rejected bids, which you most probably already know from the day-ahead market, from the spot market. That's it. Please, David.
Thank you for the precision. Okay, so now we're going to go more into detail to some of these rules. So before going to that, we need to define something called the average surplus. The average surplus of a bid or an inner need per megawatt hour of is basically the difference between the average price of the bid and the average marketing price. Actually, to be precise, is the weighted average price by the accepted quantity every time. Why we need that is because, as mentioned by Laurent earlier, we have some bids that are over different BTUs, and depending on the BTUs, we need to define if they are in the money in general or out of the money. To define that, we need to define if they are basically if their revenue are positive or negative in average in general, and that's why we need to define this value. When we have this value, average surplus, we can define three things at three different notions for the bid. If the average surplus is positive, it means that the bid, if it's accepted, it will, I would say, have a positive revenue. So in this case, we say the bid is in the money. In the opposite, if the average surplus is negative, it means that the bid will lose money, so the bid is out of the money. And if the average surplus is equal to 0, in that case, we say that the bid is at the money. For example, here we have a bid on 4 BTU. Here we see on the different BTU, we have different price, and we compare the price to the marketing price here. So we can see here, if you suppose that this is an upward bid, we have in some BTU, we have clearly on this BTU, the bid is in the money. In some BTU, we have a bid which is out of the money, and that's why we need to define in general the overall average surplus. And here clearly, it's the average surplus is clearly positive, so the bid can be accepted, even though in some BTU it seems that the bid is out of the money. Okay. Now that we define the average surplus, we can go to the two rules into detail that Amin mentioned earlier, is the UAB and the URB rules. For the UAB, so the unforeseeably accepted bids, we say that bid is UAB if the offer is accepted and it's out of the money, meaning the average surplus is negative. This is exactly similar to the notion of PAB, paradoxically accepted bid, which is used in day-ahead market. In TERRE, UABs are strictly forbidden, so that upward bid and downward bids cannot be paid less than the simulated price, or the opposite direction, downward bids or upward needs cannot be asked to pay more than the estimated price. UABs are implemented as R constraints, as I mentioned. So this is a constraint we know for sure that are satisfied by the algorithm. So for single BTU offers, this is quite straightforward actually. We just ensure that the marketing price should be greater or equal to the bid price when the price is upward, I would say, and marketing price should be lower or equal to upward need price. So when we are in the demand curve, the marketing price should be below the accepted offer price. For multi-BTU offer is more complicated because we need to look at the average surplus, and the average surplus should be greater or equal than 0. Now, when we look at the other notion, which is the URB, URB are unforeseeable rejected offers, which is the equivalent of PRBs in the day-ahead market, which is paradoxically rejected bids. A bid or need is a URB if it's fully or partially rejected and the offer is strictly in the money, meaning the average surplus is really above 0. Okay, we don't consider that a bid or need that is rejected and at the money is a URB. We don't consider that. What we can mention is that URBs are not forbidden in the algorithm, and we have one step that tries to minimize it, but it's not forbidden because the main reason is that the purpose of the algorithm is to satisfy the inelastic need, and this is why in the design we decided not to forbid URBs. So in TERRE algorithm seeks to minimize URB through 3 dedicated steps. First, we minimize the single BTU URB minimization. We have after that the multi-BTU URB minimization, and after we have the price determination process. These all are processes linked to the price determination. Of course, before that, you have the social welfare maximization. And naturally, when you try to maximize the social welfare, you try to take first, I would say, the most interesting offers, which leads naturally to the fact that we select as few URBs as possible. So, for example, if we look at a simple graph here, so we have a basic supply curve and a demand curve. The supply curve is in orange, the demand curve is in blue. So imagine everything is divisible, everything is simple. So we just look at the point where the two curve cross, and we can define the activated volume here and the marketing price. So here, in this part in blue, this is the demand that can be accepted and that are in the money. That means that this demand will be rejected if will be URB if they were rejected. Here, if we cross the marketing price on the demand curve, this part of the curve is rejected. But if it were accepted, it would have been UAB because it will be below the marketing price. And now, when we look at the supply curve, this is the part of the curve that is accepted actually. And if it was rejected, it would have been a URB because this part of the curve is clearly below the marketing price. And here on the top and right of the graph, we have the part of the supply curve that is rejected because it's out of the money. But if it was accepted, it would have been considered as UAB. Now, a global remark about the market. Fully divisible bids are a key product in TERRE market because they guarantee basically the liquidity of the market. With fully divisible bid, accepting a bit more, a bit less of a need or of a demand in general is just a matter of a small variation of acceptance of the last bid, which makes the market more flexible. And actually, it makes the price determination easily. So we would have less price determination if we have more fully divisible bids. And on top of that, there is less, I would say, combinatorial aspect, and which will lead to improved performance if we have more fully divisible bids. Complex and multi-BTU bids come with coping constraints, where the problems are more complex to solve. But I would say this is our problem also. But also the results are harder to interpret and can be counterintuitive. This is something that we already observed, because if we want to look at a price at one particular BTU, if there are a lot of multi-BTU bids, it's very difficult to understand one price. So you really need to understand the full dynamic of the market in order to end up with to understand why the price is as such. For example, another rule we already spoke about is the market price rules linked to interconnectors. So there are two rules: the price convergence rules and the prevention of adverse flow. So interconnectors between area allows energy exchange between different area, but also couple the price of this area. For example, here on the left, you have two areas, A and B. You have an interconnection between these two areas, and there is no saturation of the interconnectors, meaning that the flow doesn't reach the ATC. In that case, we have a hard constraint saying that the marketing price of both areas should be equal. And we have something similar when you have a flow from A to B that reach the ATC, meaning that there is a saturation of the interconnectors between A and B. In that case, we have another rule, which is basically a relaxation of the first rule, which is the prevention of adverse flow. In that case, we just have this relation saying that market clearing price in A should be lower than market clearing price in B, meaning that if you want to send energy from one area to another, you need to send the energy to an area with higher price. So here we detail more, we provide more detail about the market coping rules. The only difference with what I'm saying is here we look at the flow weighted average price, because as mentioned earlier, on some ATC you have something called the scaling step. The scaling step is something sometimes bigger than BTU, and in that case, if you have a flow that needs to be the same in several BTU because of the scaling step, you need to look at the average price and not on one single BTU price. And this is the same for adverse flow and the price convergence rules. And the last note means that these rules take into account eventual losses in the interconnectors, which makes the I would say the formulation more complex, but it takes the loss into consideration. And now we'll go through small examples. So here we have in red, I would say, an inelastic upward demand, and in green we have the supply curve, which is mainly composed of fully divisible bids of different quantities and price. So obviously here what we want to know is where the curve crossed. Is crossed here, so we expect that this is accepted volume, this is the marketing price. So this is exactly what we observe actually, because everything is fully divisible. This is something like I would say the perfect market, very easy to solve, and we end up with the result that we expect. Now, if we change a little bit, what we change? We added here a very cheap bid, which is BBU01, which is a block bid of 160 megawatts, and we change the bid 3 from a fully divisible bid to a block bid, which is indivisible. First remarks is to say what would be more interesting is to accept this BBU01, but since this block is indivisible, we cannot accept it because there is no extra demand here. So that's why in that case we would have I would say a cheaper supply, but we cannot accept it. And that is one of the reasons why tolerance band exists, because if we had here a tolerance band big enough, we would have been able to accept this block bid. But it is not the case in the example. So now we just have to use these 4 bids to match the inelastic upward need. In that case, we, I would say, naturally end up with 2 different solutions. The first solution is to reject the block bid, and so to cover all the demand, we have to partially accept the fully divisible upward offer 4. So this is the first offer. Since this offer 4 is partially accepted, we have a price of 55 euros, and when you compute the social welfare, we end up with the social welfare of 8,300 euros. The solution 2 will be to accept fully the indivisible bid 3, but in that case, we accept partially the fully divisible bid offer 2. So in that case, of course, we reject the offer 4. In that case, we end up with a price of 50 euros because we accept the indivisible bid. So because of the UAB rules, the price should be higher. That's why we have a price of 50 euros here. And we end up with cheaper social welfare. So that's why the algorithm will select the first solution and give it back to the platform. Now, another example to understand why a multi-BTU offer can end up with some, complexity. So here, in the first BTU, we have an inelastic upward need of only on the first BTU and no need on the second BTU. After that, we have two bid on two single BTU bid that are indivisible, the offer 1 and the offer 2. And after, we have a divisible downward offer, DDO, which is multi-BTU, meaning that if we accept it, we have to accept the same ratio in both BTU. So basically, what is the solution? The solution is that all offers are rejected. Why? Because if we want to cover the need, we need to accept the block offer, which is indivisible. If we want to accept it, we need to accept this divisible downward offer. But because it is multi-BTU, we also need to accept this divisible downward offer. But on the supply curve, we only have an indivisible bid, and they cannot match one another. So that's why we end up with this solution where nothing can be accepted. If we change a little bit the situation and we basically replace the divisible downward offer multi-BTU by two single BTU divisible downward offer DDO1 and DDO2, in that case, we can actually accept everything on the BTU1 because DDO is not linked in time. And in that case, we cover the need, and this is the goal of the algorithm, and we get a social welfare of 1,500. So maybe I can take some questions before going more into detail into the implementation part. I don't see them, so.
Yeah, so there are a few questions which we can take quickly now. So first is, are the losses taken into account? So the algorithm can take losses into account, but I don't think losses are submitted. I mean, maybe you can confirm, but I think it's 0%, right?
Yeah. So on DC links, at least operated as DC links. So yeah, the TSOs will provide loss factor, agreed. But on AC borders, indeed, there is no loss factor. So we don't consider there is loss factor integrated. But currently, we don't have, so pending to the connection of UK, at least within the TERRE, with the current configuration, we don't have a DC interconnector handled as a DC link, let's say, involved in the optimization. So.
Okay. The next question, I think, I mean, you've already tackled it, but maybe you'd like to remind the answer. It's about counter-activation and limitation of counter-activation and some concerns about continuous intraday market.
Well, indeed, it's reminding me good souvenir of discussions with you stakeholders. So a few years ago on this specific topic. Well, indeed, I think this is the perspective, at least from some stakeholders, that the counter activation will impact the liquidity of the intraday market. So from TSO's perspective, at least we don't completely share this opinion, but I think it's not the purpose of this workshop to restart this discussion. So I think, as I said previously, when we drafted the implementation framework, we found what I call the compromise between different perspectives, so stakeholder perspective, TSO perspective, but also NRA's perspective, and we committed to reduce to minimize the counter activation when such counter activation does not help the balancing purpose. And it is still the target. We just, in the amended version of the implementation framework, which is submitted to the NRAs, as I said, so yesterday, today, so these days, we have proposed just to postpone this deadline, which was fixed to end 2020 and to set it to in 1 year more or less, so in January 2021. So then this is the target.
Thank you. And so the last question, so I read it. If bids are in stepwise order, is it possible to say mathematically that divisible bids must be executed either at the minimum acceptance ratio or 100%? So I think that here there are two topics which are touched. One is the topic of multi-part bids. So I think this is what stepwise order in the question refers to. So just to be clear on multi-part bids, so you have multiple steps, and before you accept a given step, you have to accept all of the previous one at 100%. So it is not possible to accept the previous step at minimum quantity and start accepting the next step already. And there is also a second, I'd say, question which is implicit in that, which is, I'd say, about the possibility of let's say, asking a bid to be at one quantity or another, but not in between. For such things, you can use some projects which are called exclusive bids. So it is possible to submit a project which is, let's say, at some quantity. So, for instance, 60 megawatt at 50 euro or 100 megawatt at 50 euro. You can send such a project, but it cannot be both multi-part and exclusive at the same time. I hope this answers the question, and I don't see any more question in the log. So then I suggest, David, you can move on to.
There is one more question that just appeared.
Yeah, there is still one more question. Sorry, Michael.
Okay. Can you read it, Alexandra?
Yeah. Or I can do it. So if complex and multi-BTU bids introduce more constraints, will there eventually be there limits on the amount of this type of bids that BSPs can submit? Just to reformulate. Yeah. So right now, maybe it's more for me. Right now, there is at least from TSO's perspective, currently we don't have such kind of limitation, but this is one of the topic which we are discussing amongst TSOs, because I think, and it was foreseen, I think the complexity of what we implemented was made in purpose, so allowing such kind of complex bid was with the aim to increase the liquidity and to cover the maximum configuration which exists today, I would say, in Europe. So somehow we consider all kinds of complex bids, but we didn't set limitation, because first, when we designed and specified, we didn't know what would be the behavior of market participants, so BSPs, BRPs. But now, with the few months of experience, we can see some, tricky market situation, and then on the table there is this limitation topic to be discussed.
Okay. Thank you for these clarifications, Amin. David, it's up to you for this introduction of.
Perfect. So I will go more into the implementation part. I will try to be quite quick. So of course, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Here we go. So this is a similar graph that has been already presented by Amin at the beginning of the presentation. So on the left and of the left part of the schema, I would say this is also the part where BSP send offers to the TSO. TSO send all the information either to the Libra platform, either to the capacity management model. So in the Libra platform, we collect all the bids, all the leads from all different TSO. We have two parts: the platform which gather information and send the information to the optimization module, and the optimization module that gather, I would say, this compiled information and do the optimization and send back the result to the platform, that the platform distribute this result back to the TSOs with the selected bid, the needed, the netted needs, and the cross-border exchange. And after that, the TSO can exchange and share this information with the different BSPs. So in that part, I would say in the middle part, we have, I would say, the Libra platform that collects and shares the information, and the optimization module that actually do the selection of the bid and compute. In Libra, we have several, I would say, resolution modes. We have the first one, which is called unconstrained couple mode, where we consider all bids, all needs, all interconnectors, but we do not consider desired range. So this is one, I would say, resolution type. There is another resolution type, which is called the C mode. The C mode are used when we desired flow range are submitted. So actually, we additionally compute something called the constraint couple mode, which is the CC mode. It's actually similar to the unconstrained couple mode, but in that case, we do consider the desired flow range. After that, so we have two resolutions. We have the resolution with the CC mode and the one with the UC mode. So we have two results, and we merge them. We keep the price from the UC mode because we don't want the desired flow range to influence the marketing price, and we keep the quantity from the CC mode because this is actually the activation mode volume we want to consider. This merge process can indeed create some pay as bid, as we are merging price from one mode to volume and quantities from another mode. We have also, I would say, a fallback mode, which is the decouple mode, where we are considering all bids and all needs, but cross-border flow between different control areas are not considered. And in that case, the desired flow range are not considered also. And so this is a fallback in case there is an issue or something in the first mode. We are able to, we also process in parallel these DC results, and we are able to share it if needed. Now more about the implementation, how it works. So basically, the aim of the algorithm is to be as robust as possible. That's why we are splitting, I would say, the global process in two main steps, I would say. One step, which is, I would say, the big optimization problem, where we try to maximize the social welfare and also to maximize the internet satisfaction, the desired flow range, and to minimize the tolerance matching. So basically, we are taking into account all the constraints, and we try to maximize the biggest and the more important criteria. So this is the main problem where we consider everything. And in this problem, we are using a mathematical modeling, which is called mixed integral linear problem. And when we saw that, we can have successive solution, which is our intermediate solution. And this solution are sent to other process, which is called the finalization process, and they can be managed in parallel. Every time we enter into a finalization process, we have one solution from the main problem, and we try to finalize it. And to do so, we try to go iterate successively after and to maximize or minimize one criteria after the other. So first, we try to minimize the cross-border flow. After, we try to maximize the trading volume, to minimize the URBs, and to maximize the distance to the price target. And after, we do some rounding and post-processing. This finalization is really made in parallel, depending on the solution we get from the main problem, which is the biggest optimization. After that, when we process, I would say, the information, and we have the different solutions in parallel, we gather all of them into, I would say, a database. And this solution after when we reach the max time, we look at the database and we select the best solution and we send it to the platform. And one last thing about the marketing price determination, as you can notice, the process is quite complex. We have different steps, so it can be tricky to find out how the prices are computed. And actually, there are several steps that can influence the price. So here we try to summarize everything regarding the market clearing price computation. In the main problem, this is where you select you take most of the decision for the beads and for the flows. And actually, you need to consider two rules that influence the price: your UAB constraint, UAB prevention constraints that enforce either a lower bound or an upper bound on the marketing price, and also the price rules for interconnectors shall be consistent with the price rules between areas, meaning that if we have a flow between areas, we need to ensure that there is either price convergence, either there is no adverse flow between these two areas, and that we need to consider all the time. When we have the solution, the four last steps are something that is triggered in the finalization step. So when we do the cross-border minimization, the cross-border flow minimization, this has no direct impact on the prices. When we try to maximize volume maximization, this has also no direct impact on prices. After that, we try to minimize URBs, and these provide an additional bound to the marketing price. And after that, we determine the distance. We try to minimize the distance between the marketing price and the price target. Since price targets are defined as a middle point between the bounds from accepted and rejected offers, so this is how it's computed. And of course, in this step, we take into consideration all the previous bounds that has been defined on the marketing price. And now maybe we can take some questions before going to the next part.
We'll skip it, David.
Okay,
we'll skip the questions for this part. Thank you for this presentation. I move on to the next part, and then we'll get the question for both the part David presented and the remainder of the presentation. Thank you, David.
Michael is presenting.
Yes, please, Nino, if you can give me the screen. I will be presenting this last part. Good. There we go. Thank you. So the purpose of this last part is to give you, let's say, an overview of what was happened, let's say, since the go live and what's going to happen with respect to the algorithm. So, well, especially what were the updates and what are the upcoming updates. Some of them are already mentioned by Amin, and I guess that he will be intervening also into this part to bring some more clarification as necessary. So first, I'd like to, let's say, provide some sort of analysis of how are things currently, what is the market. So the algorithm has been live for a year now. I hope we made it clear that when we designed the algorithm, it was emphasized to somehow favor the projects that are bringing liquidity to the market, and those projects are what we called fully divisible bids, so which have been, let's say, identified as key projects, and I'd say the business rules have been made so that you have, let's say, some more guarantees when you submit this project than when you submit other project, so that the market favors the project which are the most beneficial actually for everyone. So these projects have some nice property. I mentioned liquidity, and also, let's say, the more you have such project, the less likely it is that you have price indetermination. So also in terms of interpretation of the results, it's quite helpful to have such products. and they have no combinatorial aspects. There's no minimum quantity. You can just basically accept any quantity in there. However, currently such products are not yet available in every market area. And what we've seen is in past year is that in some areas there are many multi-BTU beads and many block beads actually, or at least divisible beads with non-zero minimum quantity. We have been looking actually into ways to, let's say, account for the, I'd say, current state of the market, so that the results are easier to interpret and to understand, and so that the market works even better for everyone. There was a point also on satisfaction of let's say, inelastic need. It's the utmost priority of the algorithm, but in some situation, let's say, some things that have been designed might be revisited, so we can satisfy even some more situations where there are inelastic needs provided. And the last point I wanted to emphasize here is what happens with the C mode. So as soon as you have one TSO submitting DFR, you'll get results from the C mode that was introduced earlier. So DFR is desired flow ranges. And so this C mode is the combinations of the quantity from the CC internal mode and the UC and prices from the UC mode. The outcome is that, well, if you look at the result, it could be very hard to understand them because you may be accepted although you're out of the price, rejected when you're in the price, and when you feel like there's every reason for you to be accepted. And you can also have adverse flows. So in that regard, I think that, well, there are upcoming discussions and changing that might be going into the way of somehow making the results of the coupled constraint mode more straightforward and clearer for everyone when they are used. So that being said, I will go quickly into some of the recent updates that I'd say are the most visible to everyone. So first one, which was mentioned actually earlier in the discussion by Amin, is that there are currently many multi-BTU beads submitted in the market, and as I mentioned early on, the market was really, let's say, driven towards satisfaction of single BTU beads, and as a consequence, some URBs, some more URBs than expected were observed. So some changes were made so that in many cases, actually, we can take into consideration these multi-BTU URBs. Originally, so you know, in the step where we were minimizing the unforeseeably rejected beads, only single BTU beads were taken into account. And now actually there is also a step that minimize URBs on multi-BTU beads, so that in situations where you have only such beads or where there are lots of such multi-BTU beads, you can also use them to decide on the price when you have price indeterminacies. Yeah, so this actually change has, let's say, mostly an effect on price bounds, which are inferred from UAB and URB rules. So UAB is you have to be in the price when you're accepted, and URB is we are trying to minimize the amount of bids that are rejected although they are in the price. And to to finish with, I like to mention now some of the possibly upcoming changes. So first of all, I mentioned earlier reinforcement of inelastic need satisfaction. So the title might be a bit misleading. It's more in the sense of ensuring that it doesn't happen that a TSO is able to locally satisfy his inelastic need, but in the end, because of some external reasons, the TSO doesn't satisfy its inelastic need, typically because it was more beneficial for the overall inelastic need satisfaction and for the overall system for this TSO to export some flows rather than to satisfy its own inelastic need. So this can happen in some situation, and so it will be soon what we call an inelastic need check will be introduced, and this check will typically verify that each, in the end, in the outcomes of the market clearing, when a TSO was capable of satisfying its own inelastic need locally, that in the final solution it's also the case. And if it's not the case, the algorithm will fall back to the DC solution, which will guarantee that then in this case the inelastic need is satisfied locally. So the effect, let's say globally, is that the social welfare will likely be, let's say, not as good as it would be with full cooperation. But as a result, it also ensures that the TSOs who are ensuring their own security of supply will have this benefit from this security of supply, and it's not used for the sole benefit of other TSOs or for market participants. The next part is actually about the market clearing price determination. So I mentioned that sometimes there are what we call price indeterminacies that were introduced earlier on with some illustration on the curves, where you have seen that it is sometimes possible to select multiple values of the price. And so we are looking into some more, let's say, complex situations to see if and how the price computation mechanism can be improved, so that the price returned are easier, both actually easier to understand and let's say also more satisfying some more soft rules that could be defined by TSOs and that are also related to current structure of their internal markets. And so with respect to these updates, and there is a last part which I mentioned early on a bit, which is about what we call the C mode. I mentioned that this merge of solution can end up with something which is quite hard to understand, especially hard when you don't have all of the information at hand. And so there's been some discussions between TSOs and also, I trust, between regulators to see how things could be done here in order to improve some results. And it's currently the case that this discussion are, I believe, ongoing and may result in near future in some new mode actually replacing the C mode, and that let's say better take these technical constraints into consideration and also allow providing some more intuitive final results. Thank you. Amin, would you like to add something about the updates?
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. So basically, also, as I said at the beginning, so the purpose of this topic, which was presented by Michael, related to the potential adaptation of the platform, of the optimization, some updates which we intend to study, to design, and then to implement. But before, of course, before any adaptation of the AOF, we'll have to ensure that the NRAs agree, but we are not also harming the principles of the implementation framework, and we should be compliant with all the regulation but in particular pricing proposal and the TSO/TSO settlement proposal. Yeah, so as I said, also what was presented is not decided yet, so it's still on the table of to be discussed between the TSOs and will be discussed with the NRAs. And yeah, the purpose was mainly to be transparent on such potential adaptation of the AWEF in order, just to make it clear, in order to reach a better efficiency, to learn from the first experience, the first months of the run of the RR platform, also using the market monitoring, market supervision model and the reports. Yeah, so maybe we can, before going to the conclusion and the closure of this workshop, maybe then we can address the questions received. There is one related to EFEMIA. So during the market decoupling in a day-ahead market, EFEMIA is being used in oscillated mode. How about Libra? So yeah, so basically, I think as presented by David, Libra or the optimization runs in different kind of environment, in coupled mode, decoupled mode, with the constraints or without constraints related to the DFR. So then, in all cases, if there is no solution found by the coupled mode, so we always have the result of decoupled mode, which can be used, potentially used by the TSOs. But we use also the decoupled mode in order to, so for example, in the future, as presented by Michael, in order to ensure that the inelastic need will be always satisfied when we have equivalent offers, etc. So we have a decoupled mode. It can be used in the same spirit as the day-ahead market, but also can be used for other purposes. And there is a question to David, which one is tricky, so then I will leave it for David.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So the question is how it is ensured that maximization of overall welfare is secured via minimization of cross-zonal flows and without discrimination of other parties that can deliver equally or better priced order from other bidding zone than the bidding zone with the given need. So maybe Michael, can you go back to some slides before where we see how the algorithm works? Because I think I went quickly on that. Yes, exactly this one. Thank you. So on the first part, which is the main model, we try to optimize particularly the social welfare. And when we get the solution, we try to go into the finalization step. And in this finalization step, one of the first one we try to minimize is the cross-border flow. But what is important to notice is the fact that we change the model and we add one constraint which where we fix the social welfare, meaning that when we try to minimize the cross-border flow, we try to do so without decreasing the social welfare. That's why we are not doing any discrimination regarding some better offers from other bidding zones. So question can be when we are discussing about equally interesting offers. Here, this is a question of preference because we are looking at the stability of the network, and so it has been decided to prefer the satisfaction of the inelastic need locally if we can do so with equivalent social welfare. So,
thank you. So hopefully this is clear. Let's see if we have some received some other questions in the meantime.
There is a question saying that are the TSO needs live published? I think it's more for Amin.
Yeah, indeed. So right now, I was quickly checking. So the TSO need, or the need which is submitted by the TSO, is not, at least for the RR platform, is not published on the ENTSO-E platform. However, I don't know if, at least at the, when I say ENTSO-E platform, is the European Transparency Platform. I will take it home and check if at the national level, or at least as a TSOs, we have such kind of publication. But from what I see from the transparency platform, we don't have the publication of the balancing need, TSO's balancing need, because it's not requested by I would say by the regulation. But I will take it home and confirm with my colleagues on this one.
Okay, there are a few more questions. I'll take the next one. So for avoiding UAB, you mentioned that you use market clearing price to check if a block bid can be accepted or not, but the market clearing price can be known only after solving the problem. How do you tackle this issue? So actually, what's known after solving the problem is the final market clearing price. In between, we are building actually bounds on the market clearing price, and we ensure that these bounds, well, the acceptance of the bids are compatible with such bounds. So I will not go into details of the inner details, I'd say, of the algorithm, but you don't have to resort to the dual problem to introduce some pricing. You can also get some primal information if you, let's say, if you're more technical about this issue. Then there's the question about, could you explain again what the first evolution is and its effect on clearing, the one with multi-BTU? So I'll get back to it quickly on this slide. So quickly to recap, with respect to minimization of URB, initially in this step, actually in the step of the graph that you've seen just a second ago, of this one, in the minimization of URB, so in this step, originally only single BTU bids were taken into account. So if you had multi-BTU bids that ended up being rejected, they had just no impact on the price determination mechanism. What we did actually was to take those bids into account whenever that is possible into this step, actually into a second such step of minimizing URB, so that they can be used in order to build what we call the price bounds. And as a result, especially if you take an example where you have only multi-BTU bids, then you have some price bounds which would be defined with respect to those URB, and so that would result into having less, or actually the hope is no, but at least less bids which are URB in the results. I hope this is clear. I'm aware that this is not crystal clear. It's quite a tricky subject to get into, but the idea is that those multi-BTU bids were not taken into account previously, and now they are, so that the price also reflect the existence of such bid, and especially when there is some prevalence of such multi-BTU bids on one market area. And second questions, which are, what are the uplift costs? So what's called the uplift costs are the costs which are due to the bids that are payers bids. So I will go to the very first slide of the presentation and draw something quickly. I think that can be helpful. So here remember this slide, we mentioned that this is the market clearing price, okay, and they were the social welfare. But what we are discussing here, actually with respect to CC and UC mode, it's that the quantity here is set from CC mode, but the price is actually set from UC mode. So you can end up with situations that look like that. And you have all of this part of the curves that where bits are accepted, but they are not in the price. So, well, what happens then? Let's say, do you ask a BSP to lose money actually on these bids? Well, that's not what happens. What happens is that the market clearing price is still this one, but those bids are compensated at their price. So the uplift costs are the costs, the additional costs that are induced for paying these BSPs here, not the clearing price, but something which is higher than the clearing price. I hope this is clear here with these curves, but basically on a simple example, if the market clearing price is 50 euro and you have been accepted with a bid at 60 euro, upward bid, because let's say that's what was decided in C mode, then you will be paid 60 euro per megawatt hour, and as a result, the TSO will have to pay an additional uplift cost of 10 euro per megawatt hour to compensate the BSP at their price. So let's see if we have some more question. Do we?
There is.
Yes, there is another one.
There is one from Stefano. I think it's for you, maybe David, you can take over, or Michael.
It will be interesting to understand what are the variables in the sub-problem on slide 36. Okay, maybe we don't need to go too much into detail, but I can summarize like that. Basically, all the variables are in the main problem are still variables in the sub-problem. The only thing is that we add constraints that fix the precedent objective. And like that, we know that while we go further into the finalization, everything is still variable, but since we are fixing the previous objectives, we know we can only improve the solution through the finalization. So the variables are still the same. They are all existing all the time, but we're just adding constraints in order to ensure that we are only improving the solution and not deprecating some objective that we were previously computed.
Perfect. Thank you, David. I think we addressed all the questions raised, and I'm happy about that. Then it's time to conclude, and we are 4 minutes behind the schedule. Maybe as a conclusion first, I hope that we reached the purpose of this workshop. So as I said in the introduction, the aim was to give the needed details for BSPs, BRPs, market participants in general, about the activation optimization function used for the RR platform, but also used as a basis for the coming MFRR platform and other European initiatives. For me, the interaction, even if it's for me the first time, let's say, to organize such kind of workshops remotely, but I found that the exchanges were very interesting, and also the questions sometimes difficult, but meaning also that we touched what we intended to do with this workshop. I hope also that you understood the intention of the TSO to be always transparent and not to consider that what we implemented, what we discussed with you in the past, what was validated by the NRS is a kind of black box. So when nothing to hide on that. Open also if you have any further questions, and we will also draft minutes of these exchanges we have recorded and also discussed between the TSOs. But as I said, I do believe that we'll also publish the record. And you have our contacts, so please don't hesitate to ask questions. And last word to say thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much for your questions, for your interest, and thanks to all my colleagues, so from TSOs and also from Artelis for the preparation of the material and also the exchanges happened during this workshop. Thank you very much, all, and wish you a nice afternoon or end of afternoon.
Thank you very much, Amin, and thank you, everyone. Hope this was useful.
Then, yeah, Stefania, I can now leave you closing the workshop. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.